Good morning, everybody. Today's going to be a very noteworthy day. We're going to be talking about how to story mine and also how note mining is going to be useful for you. Now, I don't even know if you guys have ever even heard of this idea of note mining, but we're going to dive a little bit deeper into it. And I'm not even going to teach you new things. All I'm going to be doing is saying, hey, I hope you go and get your note-taking device or your notes wherever it is that you hold them. And we're going to actually have a few different moments where I give you time to dive through your notes, and then we're going to share some things that you've experienced this year and do some reflection. Now, today I actually have a great quote for you, and I'm going to wait till I get this streaming on Facebook and I'll share it with you, but it's gonna be awesome. And I hope that you guys have some great experiences today. Driving Thursday, that's today. Let me go to group. All right, we're going live and elevate. Okay, we're going live in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Hey, good morning, Facebook. Good morning, my friends and family. Guys, it is a great day in the neighborhood. I have a great topic for you today. We're going to be diving in and talking about story mining and note mining. And you're probably like, wait a second, note mining? What the heck is that? How could that help me as an ICM? Well, we're going to find out. We're actually going to be diving in to some of your own notes. So I hope that you bring your notes anytime that you're listening to calls like this, or you're doing anything with the classes. And we're going to share some awesome insights that we've had from all of the different experiences that you've had this year. So check this out. As we are diving into our notes, one of the things that I want to impress upon you is that notes are as useful as you make them, right? If you only go and write them down that one time and you throw the notes away, you helped yourself a little bit to make sure that that went from what the speaker was saying into your head. But when you go back and you use those notes again, you review those notes, and then you take those action steps, it makes the notes more meaningful. It makes every single moment better. And it's really exciting. So I've actually got a great quote for you today. This is one that I used to teach all my students. And it's in Chinese, but it's awesome. So, 好记性不如烂笔头. And this idea is a great memory, or the perfect memory, isn't as good as even writing a little tiny bit, right? So another way to translate that would be the faintest ink is better than the brightest memory. Now, this little axiom is something that I live by, and I think it's really helpful for note taking, right? But also for figuring out, hey, how do I take what I've experienced and do something with it? Okay. Now, I'm not perfect at organization. I'm not perfect at taking all these notes, but I'm going to give you some strategies that have helped me, and I hope will be able to be beneficial to you as you move forward in your Granadas ICM journey, and also to remind you of a couple cool things today that are happening. Now, first, on the 26th of January, guys, this is cool. We've got a velocity banking class that is live. There's going to be a re-recording up at corporate, and if you're like, hey, I would love to go and experience what it's like to do a live recording, you will have that experience on the 26th, and it's going to be awesome. So guys, once again, welcome. We're going to have some fun today. We've got Anthony, Chuck, we've got Andy, Berta, JL, and Janet, and it's going to be awesome. So the other thing that's coming up is this Saturday. We've got an awesome event. This is our opportunity to reflect and to really vision cast what we want to do. We're calling it our Vision Quest event, all about making sure that we can make 2024 the very best that it possibly can be. That's happening this Saturday from 9 to 1. It's going to be awesome. And I hope that you guys take the time to be there, build for that event, and let people know, hey, if they want to be an ICM, you can create the vision and design the life that you want. And here's just one of the tools that you've got, is that vision board. And this training is going to be very helpful. We're going to have Bill Predabon come out, share about goals and about how he's been able to go from where he was running his sports company to now running a multi-million-dollar real estate enterprise. Really amazing. And we're going to hear from Michael Huggins and from Dane Clark. It's going to be awesome. So that will be awesome. Then what else do we have this week? I think that's about what we have for this week. Always on Monday, we've got our Founders Live that'll be starting up. And then our class on the 9th, we've got another thing that's coming up, that if you're local here in Utah, we've got our masterminds are happening on Mondays. So there's our announcements. But guys, we're going to dive straight into this topic. Now, first off, I want to hear what you guys think. When you hear the word story mining and note mining, what does that pop into your head, right? I'm going to say story mining and note mining. What does that make you think of? And if you have some gold or some diamonds that you've written down in your notes and you forget about them and you don't go back and review them, it's almost like they didn't happen. But what's cool is, just like that quote I shared at the very beginning, how Jishing Burulan Bito, right? Good memory, or the faintest ink is better than the brightest memory. If you have your notes there and you go and review those notes, you can just nudge that memory and say, oh, you can do something with that. You can use that. You can actually take that idea and run with it. So what does story mining mean to you? In the chat, I want to hear you guys, or you can even come off mute. What is story mining and note mining? Has anyone ever done this? What does it make you think of? And I'd love to hear some of your responses. Carla, go ahead.
So what comes up for me is just the word nuggets. What are the valuable nuggets or resources, tools that I can glean from the story or my previous notes? And to your point, becoming a practitioner at that, right? Not just becoming a practitioner at listening, at doing to accomplish my goals.
I think that's beautiful. So nuggets, resources, tools, they're buried in our notes. If we're not careful, they'll stay buried, right? And one of the reasons why I want to bring up this idea of note mining is exactly what she's talking about. There are nuggets of wisdom that you've experienced, or even thoughts that you've had about classes you've taken, about different trainings you've gone through. What has happened since? Now, one of the cool things in the Renatus back office is you have that timestamp note, that when you're taking your notes, you can actually timestamp them. I'm curious how often you guys go back and review those notes in Helios, and how often you will go and look at those notes, like, oh, that's something I can take action on now, or oh, that's something that I'm going to do, and I want to make sure that I understand that a little bit more in depth. Sometimes I will go and all I'll do is, instead of listening to a class, I'll just go through my notes and see what are things that I can do now to apply what I've learned. And there's those little action step things that you can also take in the back office, that they're like, oh, do X, Y, or Z. And I can go and review, hey, what did I do with the class that I experienced? And sometimes I'll be like, man, I did a lot of things with that class. And other times I'm like, I listened to that whole 8-hour class and I've done nothing. What was I doing? Right? I learned things, but did I do things with what I learned? So yeah, that's huge. So guys, what I'm going to do right now, so that was an awesome thing. Do you have any other insights there, Carla, before I move on? Go ahead.
I would say you're making me feel very uncomfortable, because I never go back. But that's where on the other side of being uncomfortable is learning, right?
Yeah.
So, and doing. So no, I don't go back. I'm always taking, well, most of the time I am taking notes, but I don't go back. So this is, in career planning, we talk about exposure, exploration. So this is, because I've never heard the term story mining or note mining, right? So, but it makes sense. What am I going to do to capture that, right? So another uncomfortable day in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Well, here's one of the reasons why I want to bring this up, guys. You have a wealth of experience. You have your entire life to draw from. Every class you have ever gone through, any time you've ever read a book, quotes that you've heard, all these different experiences that you've had. And when you can say, you know what, I'm going to do something with all those experiences, instead of being a content consumer, when you are story mining and you're note mining, you're actually figuring out, how can I be a contributor? How can I take what I've learned and apply it to a certain situation and contribute? You could do it as, making a training that you do for somebody. You could take those ideas and say, I'm going to take this and package it in a different way so that I can put my own spin on it. Like, I heard this from Rob Sperry, where he said, you know what, instead of trying to recreate an article that was really popular in the news, read the article, take the bullet points that make sense to you and that you have a comment on, and then you can even post their article and say, you can read the original here. Here's my take on why this is important in my industry. And all you're doing is putting your opinion out there. And instead of changing what it was, you're saying, I am going to add to it, and you contribute to the conversation. Does that make sense, guys? Yeah, go ahead, Carla.
Makes a lot of sense. And I've been doing that this week. There is a cultural holiday, Kwanzaa, right? And I've never really celebrated it. But as I look closer at the principles, what I've been doing is tie it to what Carla cares about, right? In terms of personal development, and tying, so we had unity. And I believe you need to be unified in what you believe, right? It's almost like your personal mission statement, self-determination, so you can help others. So I gave the author credit, but it's really coming from me and and that's what I'm doing on my social media this week, right? And sometimes I'm tough on myself, which is good. And I'm reflecting that what posting every day, I don't, do it all the time, but posting and taking from the buckets that Rob Sperry talks about, right? Or Nate Lambert, who got it from Rob, right? In terms of finance, fun, family, fitness. And so it's a loop. So I've been doing that and really sharing myself and the story, right? That's what people, so whether it's pictures with my family or my goals, my book, nobody wants to hear sell, sell, sell. They want to have all of you holistically, right? So yes, that's what I've been doing this week as it relates to sharing content
Yeah,
related to me and related to a topic that's happening right now.
I love it. And as you're doing that, you're allowing your audience to actually see multiple sides of you. It's not just the, hey, here's the sales side, here's the offer, but you're creating a connection with them and becoming that expert or that shared expert in the topic. I think that's huge. Thank you so much for sharing, Carla. That's so good. So good, guys. I'm learning. Janet shared a great idea too. She said story mining, what she thinks of is going back to find those things that most stand out, or creating personal clarity about my needs. That's awesome. Janet, what else sticks out to you as you think about this idea of story mining and note mining, right? Going out there and finding those golden nuggets. Go ahead.
It's really that, I don't know what else to say besides personal, like, revelation to you. Like,
Yeah.
As I go back, those things that really hit me, that are really like personal, that really come to me, even if it's not exactly what's in the notes, it's a thought that comes with it. It's, oh yeah, that's what I need to do next. That's my next step.
Yeah.
That's my personal pathway.
And what's interesting? You bring that up, that as you go back through it, there are more thoughts that come. And one of the things that I did last time I was on an airplane, instead of reading somebody else's book, I took my notes with me and I went to the beginning of them, and I had a highlighter and I had my other notes, and I ended up notating my notes and going back through and figuring out, all right, what is something that I can use here? How can I apply this? Is there anything that makes sense to me? And I was just going back through some of the things that I'd been learning and why that was helpful today. Because there's sometimes you'll hear something and it'll stick out, and then you're like, wow, that was really cool. What can I do with that? And you'll do something and it'll be amazing. And sometimes you'll hear something and you're like, oh, that's really cool, and then not do anything with it. And eventually that thought will pass. And if you don't remind yourself of it, then you won't get to do those amazing things or have that amazing experience. And sometimes we look through all these different notebooks, like, man, I've got 3 notebooks in front of me, and I'm looking at the progression of what has happened with Renatus recently. And so one of the funniest things is just looking back over how my notes have changed as far as the shape of them. Now I do all these types of notes that are mind maps, but before I used to do all kind of free form notes that were, I guess they were written in just how can I capture every single idea. And now I'm much less concerned about how do I capture every idea, and it's more on what's the main topic that we're discussing and how can I use that topic to my advantage, or how can I understand that topic and maybe even some of the examples that are in that topic. And that mind mapping strategy is super helpful when you're taking new notes. Sometimes it gets a little gobbledygook because you don't know always where the speaker is going to be going. And if they're not super organized in their presentation, then yes, it will get mixed up. And I can share with you guys how I will often shift from the way that some notes are taken to others. So like, here's a good one. I was in a class with the power of conversation, right? And I was like, all right, this was 6 or so hours of the class, right? On one page there. But I hit a point where instead of trying to keep adding to that one page, I was like, you know what? Anytime somebody new commented, I'm going to make another mind map just on what they said and commented. And I ended up adding a lot more like micro things depending on who was speaking. So Vince, he said these comments, and then Wendy said this comment, and Cassandra said that comment. And oh, that's such a good quote. Okay, check this out. Depression is a luxury. You're talking about that's it's so true. And if you're curious about that, you get curious about what are the things that you get depressed about, and you think all the way through it. If you don't have that that luxury time to be depressed, I'm like, oh, that's good. But now, guys, here's one of the reasons that I'm bringing this up, this idea of story mining, this idea of mining through your notes. I actually want you guys to get out your notes and do something that doesn't usually happen on these calls. I actually want you to go back through your notes. I'm going to give you probably 10 minutes. I want you to see if you can find something that would help you today that was written by you, or that would literally help you unpack some of the ideas that you've had in the past. And I'll put on a timer for 10 minutes, and then we'll talk about it, because that'll be 8:32. Okay, so it's 8:22 right now. 8:32. I want you guys to really grab out your notes, right? Wherever you hold your notes. It could be on your phone, it could be on an iPad, but figure out, or it could even be in the back office, right? You can go log into myrenatus.com, go into notes, and then go through those notes that you've done in the past. And I want you to find at least one nugget that is for you. And if you can find something to share with somebody else on this call as well, that you're like, oh man, that would be beneficial to other people as well, please share it. Because we're going to actually open up in 10 minutes, and I will have you guys come and share some of the insights that you taught yourself by writing those notes, right? Or that you experienced. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing. We got 10 minutes, and I'm setting a timer right now. Go through your notes, 10 minutes, and all you need to do is find something that was of value to yourself. What's that next step for you? I'm going to go back through these notes from this year. Excellent. Okay. So here's what the next portion of this is going to be. Instead of me just going and brain dumping all the things I learned onto you guys, what we're going to do is we're going to actually, because Sandra is having her hand raised, she can start, but you're going to share one of the ideas that you were reminded of, that you wrote down, right? One of the things that you're like, man, this is going to be really helpful. And as you're sharing those ideas, I want to make sure that even though it's applied specifically to you, that you can say, hey, this is why it's valuable as an ICM or as a real estate investor. Okay. All right. So Sandra, go ahead and share one of the things that you experienced while you're doing your story mining and your note mining. Go ahead.
I just realized I don't have a headset on. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead.
That's a miracle. Thank you, Lord. Okay, so I took some notes at Chris Albin's intensive, probably even last year. And as I was reading it, I thought, this is a light bulb. So evictions, disgruntled landlords are his favorite lead source because they wanted passive income. So he said, make them an offer, give them the monthly checks, which is what they wanted in the first place. And I thought, wow, that is really, that's just so perfect and so obvious. So that was one thing for sure. And then I wrote down another phrase is success is the worthy, yeah, I switched pages, the worthy accomplishment of a progressive ideal. So the point is, when you put an idea together and you go for it, you will actually feel that you have accomplished. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. I know I have more, but I'm sure you have other people.
No, I love that. Earl Nightingale's quote right there. It's one of my favorites.
Oh, thank you. Clean it up. Clean it
Yeah.
up. I was close.
Success is a progressive realization of a worthy ideal. One of my favorite quotes of all time. That's such a good reminder. Every single one of us have those success moments. But we have to recognize that that's what we went forward trying to do, and now we did it, right? And that's what success is. I love that. Okay. What are some of the other experiences that you had going through this? I know that 10 minutes was not enough to go through a lot of your notes, but you know what's cool? I went through like probably 25 pages of experience, and I went through like 4 or 5 months of my life's notes. So that was pretty cool. So definitely not enough time, but what did you experience? Carla, go ahead.
So just the exercise of going back, because I would not have gone back. That's been one of my downfalls, is that I take notes, but I don't review them. So my instinct when you said, oh, I'm just going to go back on what I wrote yesterday. But no, I picked up one of my books, and what I saw there were notes from Steve Larson's class, Building Your Business Online. And he talked about being the lobster, poking the bruise. I don't remember some of it. I have to take more detailed notes. But my takeaway is really knowing who your customer avatar is and where they are. So like right now, in terms of marketing my book, which is really an engagement tool for people that are interested in career planning services or the profits course. That's the way I see it. So coming up with what I want to implement, the action taken is documenting that, right? This whole yesterday, and what I say is, not to be over religious, but whether it's your higher power, the universe, God, I call God, is when the student is ready, the resources will appear. So my theme for 2024 is more systems. I am not an intellectual, so meaning that it's more difficult for me to create those buckets and those. So I want to document my plan in terms of the marketing plan for my book, which is that high price offer, which is the profits course or career planning sessions with me. So my call to action is documenting that and putting it in my notes on the phone as part of my next steps of saying, who am I marketing to? Is it women? Is it career seekers? Is it business owners? Just really being crystal clear on who my avatar is.
I love it. And as you're identifying those things, it will get very clear as you're writing it down if that is who you actually want to talk to or not. Right? But if you don't write it down, then it all sounds good. One of the notes that popped up for me it was from a Bill Omi intensive from 2022. And he said, if you haven't gone through enough deals, every deal looks good. And I was like, that's true. You need to analyze as many deals as possible so you can see the good ones and you can see the bad ones and you can see a mediocre one. And if you don't have enough of that experience, then every deal looks good and you don't want to do that.
There's something in human resources, we call it behavioral based interviewing. When, the interviewer asks, tell me about a time when you did X. So I know you're a former teacher, and I remember my oldest son was a Teach for America Corps. He's a lobbyist now because he wanted more money. But the thing is, all I remember, so what I would ask an incoming teacher possibly is, tell me your process as it relates to lesson plans, right? Most teachers, because that's work and you have to do it consistently. So if someone didn't have a story, if they didn't have a time when they were frustrated or they missed the deadline, I know that they don't have the experience and they're talking theoretically, right? So if we're not practitioners if we don't have data and stories, right? So that's how we glean out the imposters in human resources when they like taking stuff from a book as opposed to their own experiences, right? So
so true. So yesterday, it's funny you bring it up. How do you plan specifically with like a one-on-one session or with somebody that like a small group? And yesterday I was doing a coaching session where I was teaching someone. I'm doing a value exchange with him where he's coaching me in health and fitness, and I'm training him in growing his business and focusing on language development and his story development. And he's like, you know what, man, I don't know where I'm going to be going with my business. I know it's going to be going in a different way. And I just asked him questions and I listened. And that was my plan, was ask questions, listen, ask questions, listen. And then every once in a while I was like, this was an insight. I was able to talk a little bit about standard operating procedures because I have that experience as a short-term rental operator. And my business is drastically different because I wrote down all those processes. And I said, you do that, suddenly you actually know, here's what my process is rather than here's what a process is in the ether of your ideas. Right? It's like, write down your process. And then I talked about these ideas of milestones in your business, like, or the mile markers, where you're like, all right, your customer acquisition is one of those elements, right? Okay, what's the next milestone? All right, do they buy that entry level product? I guess for us, it's like you've got Essentials, AIT, and our Profits course, right? And Genius, all these different mile markers, if you will, saying, hey, is this a need for you right now? If it isn't, then we'll go, what's the next need for you? And you identify those needs, and then how do you fulfill on them? And it was just really interesting, just asking the questions, listening, and then going a little bit deeper. And sometimes with our lesson plans, if you will, or the plans of attack with things, we think we have to have every single turn figured out. We have to have every single element. And it reminds me of what Jay Massey brings up about investing. If you remember his financial strategies class, he's like, imagine you're in a raft and you've got all these boulders in the middle of the river, and you think, oh, I have to know all 40 or 50 turns that I have to make. He's like, you don't need to worry about that. What you need to figure out is, what's the next action I need to take? You know, you're on the river, you're in the right, go in the right direction. How do I make sure I dodge that first boulder? And the next one's coming up. How do I dodge that one? That's the obstacles that you come up with, and you make sure that you miss. So take them one thing at a time. That's that idea.
And what I learned also from the 12-step programs, like I'm in one for my food, whether you're one for alcohol, drugs, sex, it doesn't matter. I think everyone should be in one. You just have to realize what your weakness is. But the thing is, they talk about sharing your experiences, strength, and hope, right? And that's what people want. That's what people are attracted to. And 12-step programs talk about we are a program of attraction, not promotion. And people are looking for authenticity. So when you are sharing what you've been through, like what you coach us in every day, Brigham, is tell your story. Where were you before? And why did you come and what did you do? You don't need a whole bunch of quote unquote successes, but they want to know where you were. And only you can really do that. And it does require you to do some work in terms of, digging deep. I'm more of an introvert. So this whole year, it's like, the people who are looking for me are interested in my story. Right. So it's sharing that. And that's the digital content. That's the content. Like, I have that. I have loads, 50 plus years of data on that, right? So that this intentional space for us to dig deeper and be able to share. That's what you're teaching us. So I appreciate you and thanks for your service.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. Guys, if you ever wondered, how can I stand out in the marketplace? You know what's cool? You share your story, because nobody has your story, period. There are ways that you can communicate the value of Renatus that literally nobody else can. From your background, right? From your skill set, your tool set, your mindset, all the different elements that have made you you. If you speak to that truth and you say, hey, here's who I am, here's my experience, and you can help others say, oh, I relate with that guy or that girl. I connect with that. I like them. I'm getting to know them more. And eventually, as people know, like, and trust you, they want to do business with you. And it's that idea of attracting, not promoting. We still do promotions, but if people aren't attracted to us, they're not going to be listening. You guys have all been in a mall when you walk down that hall and you've got the promoters like, hey, here's this little toy, check it out. And you're like, I didn't want that little helicopter thing, thank you. And it's a huge difference in being attracted to something, walking into a store of your own free volition, rather than having the promotion guy come and get up in your face. And they call him a barker at a carnival. You've heard this before, right? A carnival barker. And you think about, is that a really attractive thing to be called? Are we ICM barkers, right? Are we barking out all of the things that are valuable for us, or are we actually attracting people to us? And that value is in the way that we show up and how we're sharing our experience and our stories and the experiences of others. Let's open it up to some other people. What are your experiences that you had while you're going back through your notes, while you're doing that note mining? Because I'm actually curious to see what other value you guys were able to find in your own notes and in your own experiences. We've got a handful of people on the call. We've got Gilbert, we've got Janet, we've got Anthony, we've got Berta. Hey, go ahead.
Good
Hi,
morning.
Berta.
Okay, yeah. So that I actually heard that if if they don't gather they scatter. So that's from Bob Snyder,
Yes.
and I heard that from him 7 years ago when I started, and I always keep going back to that, and especially when I feel like, okay, should I go online or should I go in person? Sometimes, we have those, lazy moment where it's really important, when I have a feeling like that, I push myself to go in person because, I'm trying to defeat, the not so good, the not so good, habit, I should say. So, it's just so important, that, it's just, again, I keep going back to that because not only that I apply that to my business, my real estate business, my ICM business, but it's also for my family. So we can apply that with anything. So if you don't show up, if we don't gather like the family, we all scatter. So we see prior to lockdowns, we had a lot more people that show up in person. So now we don't. So it is so important, to remember that. So that's, I really strongly believe, that, and I'm so grateful that I hear that from Bob Snyder, so 7 years ago.
I love it.
So thank you so much, because I think what you're doing is just so important. I go back to my notes, and but not as much as I should, and kind of like what Carla was saying. She writes it down and she doesn't really go back. So I do go back, but not as much as you probably do, because I seem to to see that you do that a lot. So thank you so much, for bringing this to our attention and stuff. And one thing also that that what Bob Snyder said, Scott actually said that on Impact this morning, and talking about the what he wants to do for 2024. And so he mentioned that. I was like, yeah. So I was so happy, and now here you are, mentioning about that, because I just like, yeah, I stick to that because it's just it's just so powerful too, and it's really real. I mean, it happens because, again, we don't have to look far in our community. If ever we don't see much, then it's just these just you're not gonna be as successful. I mean, people that are successful, they show up.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing. I think it's true. If we don't gather, we scatter, and all of us have that opportunity to go back and review our own notes and the value that is in there. Let's look. What does Valerie say? You've got, so this helps us to reflect on what we may not be doing. Awesome point. Thanks, Brigham. Yeah, no problem. And Valerie, here's another really cool thing that uh, that you may actually discover. It's not even that you're not doing something. You might have actually been doing something for a while that you talked about early on in your notes, or that you've experienced, and you'd forgotten that you did it. And you can have a little celebratory moment and celebrate those successes. I learned this from Steffi Torcani, who teaches in the Genius in 21 Days class. She's like, when you celebrate your successes and you celebrate, hey, you know what? I said I was going to do this. I had this intention. It was kind of like what Sandra was bringing up. I had this realization that I wanted to progress toward my worthy ideal, and I took a step towards it. You can celebrate. And you're like, yes, I actually made progress. I did this. I took action. I submitted the offer. I actually went and I talked to somebody, and they were open to the idea. Anytime you take action, you're putting those little emotional coins in your bank, saying, you know what? I can do this, and I am doing this, and I'm going to do this until I get it right. And that's what's so cool, is we sometimes recognize that we have more success than we ever thought possible. Like, one of the things that I do every once in a while is I'll go back through my go back through what I had on my vision board. I'll take it down and say, what did I do with what I had on my vision board? So it was really hard for me to go to Costa Rica leaders retreat. It was a huge sacrifice for me financially to figure out how to do that. But I was able to do that, and I wrote the whole experience down, because that was on my vision board for like almost a whole year. And I was able to go to Costa Rica, and I did the exact excursion that I wanted to do, and I wrote about it. Sometimes we leave ourselves out. Oh, here's another one. I was like, you know what? I haven't had nice professional family photos done in a little while. It was like $400 or $500 to get that set up, and a lot of energy and effort went into that. But literally last year, I was able to go and take the time to do that. And sometimes we forget about how cool our experiences are. So here's another one. This was one of the things that that helped me pay for Renatus. Right. So on October 1st, 2022, I paid for Renatus by saving $19,800 off of my mortgage by applying one class from the mortgage class. I was able to knock off $67K that I would have paid in principal and mortgage insurance. And I wrote down those numbers. I was like, that's pretty cool. Because of the way that I applied the education and I understood what was possible, I was able to realize some cool savings. Now, every single one of us have had success in different ways, but if we don't stop for a moment and recognize what those successes are, we don't have the time to celebrate. We don't have the time that is actually positive for us. And if we don't take that time to celebrate, it's almost like it never happened, right? You're downplaying your success. You're downplaying the cool things that have happened in your life. But when you actually write down something in your notes, you take action on it, and you had a result, good or bad, doesn't matter. You took action, you did something, you now have some experience to build on. And that's a great foundation to take your next step. And one of the things I've found, because look, I've got multiple books of notes. When you take your notes and you say, all right, what is something that I want to do with this information, and you go and put it to action, you can get more value than you had the first time. I'm going to give you one other tool that you can use to actually increase the quality of your note taking and your application. So here's one way that I paid to go through a class called it was basically social media marketing with Rob Sperry and Brian Fryer. And what I did after I went through that course, I'm gonna actually share my screen, even though it's kind of odd. I went through that course, and instead of just having that course notes, because I felt like the information was extremely valuable to me, I did the course notes, and then I ended up writing down basically like a small book worth of those notes that I reflected on what I learned. And I wrote a small little book basically based on those. So I go to projects. Let me find my social media boot camp. That's what he called it. So I had 31 pages. I had basically half a notebook worth of notes that I took. And instead of letting it just stay in my notebook, I took what I learned and I put my own swing on it. And this is a way that I've actually been able to train my virtual assistant on all the different elements that I wanted in my short-term rental business, and the way that I'm focusing my what do you call this? My social media outreach. And I know this might not be as applicable to every single person, but this is the principle that I'm trying to share with you guys. You don't necessarily have to do this exact same thing where you go and make it look pretty. But what I did is I took all the things that I learned from this class and I condensed them into something that is usable again, right? I have the main topic here in the middle: Facebook profile, your reach outs, your exposures, and then some quotes that I really liked. And this idea of how many exposures and how many reach outs are you doing every day, your live videos, right? Your curiosity posts, not using links with your affiliate marketing online, right? Diagnosing problems, home run posts, and then scheduling out your posts in different ways, crushing it with reels, going through your Facebook strategy, making sure that you're the top headline of any page, contributing on the stage rather than being part of the crowd, right? Figuring out, hey, how do I do these little polls and make sure that I'm increasing engagement, right? And creating social proof with testimonials, right? Building a welcome environment and making sure that you are identifying pains and challenges with hooks that people have, right? Making sure that you're giving meat every single time that you are sharing something, that you're contributing to the conversation. You're also adding value through consistency and that growth. Business pages, another huge value there. And then opt-in polls that allow people to sort themselves into who you actually want to work with and who you don't. And then figuring out, hey, how do I take someone from a cold lead all the way to a highly hot qualified lead? And then this is what I created based off of all those other things, right? So this was actually my content strategy. I took basically an entire class. I went through that whole class that was an 8-week program, and I condensed it into these 30 pages. And then on this last page, what I did is, what did I learn from that class? How do I apply it? And this is the thing that I did. And this is what I gave to my virtual assistant. I said, do this, period. We positively impact, uplift, and engage our community with behind the scenes stories and 5-star service. That's what I came up with from that whole class. And then I said, all right, now what's my daily minimum? 1 public post, 8 stories or more. So sometimes this is just one of the times I'm really proud this year that I did this, to give you an example of what's possible. Sometimes you will go through a class and you'll be like, that was so much information I got flooded with, that you don't do anything with what you learn. And what I propose and what I want to do better at is, anytime I go through a class that was like, that was absolutely transformative, I don't want it to be transformative for only a day. I want to make sure that it actually changes me fundamentally, even if it's just a tiny little shift. You think about what a chiropractor does, they don't go and change the entire alignment of every single bone. They're like, oh, all right, where is the shift needed? Oh, that's a little out of alignment. And it can be the slightest thing, and suddenly your pain's gone. Suddenly you're back in alignment. Like, oh, I can move again. Sometimes we get stuck, and all it is just a slight little adjustment, and we're back in alignment. And sometimes when we go back through our notes and we say, you know what? The goal of this is to figure out, what is my content strategy? Or the goal of this is, how do I acquire properties creatively? Or the goal of this is, how do I become a value creation expert? How do I become a XYZ person? And when you can really dive in and understand all those different points and say, all right, now what am I going to do with that knowledge, that experience, that tool? And you can simplify it to the point that it can't be misunderstood. That's actionable. Does that make sense? It's something that you can actually do, because a confused mind quits. I've heard this over and over and over and over and over. A confused mind quits. If you look through your notes and you're like, I just give up, I don't want to do anything with this. Think about it, guys. If you can simplify it to the point that you know you will do it, then you can do it. But if you are confused, then the confused mind will not act. Okay, let me see what Sandra sent to me. Your social media book is amazing. Thank you. This is exactly my biggest week suit, and I could not afford to attend that event. What would you charge me to share that masterpiece you created? I'm not going to charge you, Sandra. I can't pay much yet, but truly captured so much delayed and so much beauty. Private message, please. Oh, shoot. Private message, don't read out loud. I'm sorry, Sandra, I read that out loud. But I do appreciate the compliment there. I'm happy to share that with you. One of the things that is valuable for me is to see that what I create and what I do is helpful to somebody else. And eventually I want to be able to go and coach people the way that I see other people doing it. And for me, it's like, how do you put value first? Being that value creation expert is something I'm always working on becoming. And I'm not there yet, guys. I don't know if we ever really arrive, but figuring out that there are things that all of us can do to get a little bit better. And sometimes your breakthroughs and those little minor adjustments, you already took the notes on. You already have the blueprint for. You already have the ideas. All you need to do is do something with them. You have to reorganize them. And maybe you need to give yourself the grace, kind of like what Carlo was saying, of saying, you know what, this is what I want to do. Use your notes to create that book. Use your notes to create the idea. All right, Valerie, she says, Brigham, you are a coach. We're blessed to have you. Oh, thank you so much, Valerie. And the last thing I wanted to share with this, because this is a tool that Every single one of you, whether you have money or not, whether you've made money or not in this business, whether you have had a huge, crazy, amazing result with real estate, or you are literally day one in this, you can take notes. And if someone says, what have you done with the Renatus education? Let me tell you, I started my success journal. Oh, I talked with a handful of other companies. One of them was B&B Formula. I talked to a guy named Noah, and I realized that our program is way better than paying $9,800 for coaching and mentorship for 8 sessions. And you're like, oh, I get 12 sessions with this group, and I paid $26,000. Oh yeah, that's way better. All right. I learned about making sure that my cleaning and systems and processes were really important. My systems, operations, and processes have to be automated. Otherwise, I can't take that on. Oh, that's my second page. Do you want more? I've got more. Every single time you take a class, every time you take action, every time you do something with what you learned with Renatus, you are adding proof that it works. And you can add elevation to every single thing that you've learned, and you can elevate what other people are saying. You can say, hey, you know what? I'm not the expert in this, but you know what I just learned? And then you can insert anything you just learned. I hope that frees some of you. If you're brand new, guys, my goal is not to overwhelm you. My goal is to actually allow you to say, I can do this. I can share something that I just learned. I can read a book and say, man, that was really cool. That reminded me of somebody. I'm going to share that insight with that person. Start a conversation, because all wealth is created through conversation. So, story mining. Sorry if I got on my high horse a little bit, but literally, guys, this is a valuable skill, and one that I think the Genius in 21 Days program does really well with helping you figure out how to organize or reorganize. That's something that's been very valuable for me. As sometimes I'll take notes like this where it's, just flat, and just write down as much as I can, and then I'll go back and I'll create a mind map off of that. And I don't always do that, but I want to do it better. And I'm making strides to get more organized. I'm definitely not there yet. I'm not trying to say, oh man, Brigham's the best at being organized. I'm not. But what I'm getting better at is saying, what am I going to do with what I have learned, and how can I add value to others?